just come over from the Senate. I will first read the chairman's script as required by law. As chair of the House Education Committee, I find that due to the state of the emergency declared by the governor as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, and in accordance with the House Rule 67 and the governor's emergency order number 12 pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04, this public body is authorized to meet electronically. This is a public hearing of bills referred to the Education Committee. Executive session on pending legislation may be held. Please note that there is no physical location for members of the public to observe and listen contemporaneously to this meeting. However, in accordance with the emergency order, I am confirming that all members of the committee and select legislative staff have the ability to communicate contemporaneously during this meeting through the Zoom electronic meeting platform, and the public has access to contemporaneously listen and, if necessary, participate in this meeting by the Zoom platform or by telephone. All necessary access information has been made available in the House calendar and through the electronic calendar on the General Court website. The notice for the meeting complies with House rules and RSA 91-A. Anyone who has a problem accessing the meeting should call 271-3600 or email hcs@ledge.state.nh.us. In the event the public is unable to access this meeting, the meeting will be adjourned and rescheduled. I want to introduce the staff that is assisting us today with this meeting. Jennifer Ford is our committee researcher. Please note that all votes that are taken during this meeting shall be done by roll call vote. Let's start the meeting by taking a roll call attendance. When each member states their presence, please also state whether there is anyone in the room with you during this meeting, which is required under the right to know law. Representative Shaw.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Representative Cordelli.
Here in the committee room.
Representative Bohm.
Here in the committee room.
Representative Allard.
Here in the committee room.
Representative Lakis.
Here in Hudson.
Representative Moffitt.
Here in the committee room.
Representative Hobson.
Deb?
Debbie.
I'm here at home in East Kingston.
Representative Andrus.
Here, home alone in Salisbury.
Representative Ford.
Home alone in Chester in my office.
Representative Leon.
Sorry about that. Home in Derry. I have kids sleeping in the house, and I may have some family coming in and out from time to time.
Representative Sodi.
Here in the committee room.
Representative Myler.
Home in Kentucky alone.
Representative Luno.
Here.
Representative Shaw here in the committee room. Representative Cornell.
Here, home alone in Manchester.
Representative Tanner. Representative Tanner. Representative Ellison.
I'm here, home alone in Concord.
Representative Mullen.
Here, still in the chilly basement.
Representative Lay.
I am here. I am home alone in Jaffrey, New Hampshire.
Representative Woodcock.
Here in Snoqualmie, New Hampshire. My wife is in the house and my dog will undoubtedly be barking once it's over.
Representative Ladd.
Representative Ladd here in the LOB in Concord.
Everybody got Linda? She may show up. Thank you.
Okay, so what we'll do is we'll go ahead. Our first bill to discuss today is Senate Bill 19. This is an act relative to the degree granting authority of Signum University. And it looks like we have Senator Ward in the queue here.
Yep, I promoted her to panelist. Good morning, Senator Ward.
Good morning. I'm Ruth Ward, Senator for District 8. Good morning, Mr. Chair and honorable members of the Education Committee. I will introduce SB 19, which will authorize Sigmund University to grant degrees. SB 19 is very similar to HB 513, which will be heard in the Senate today. Signum University is a totally online degree program which can be done part or full-time. It focuses on language, art, and literature, plus other sophisticated programs such as the study of Hobbit. The cost is low and scholarship opportunities are available. Sigmund University has already received approval from the New Hampshire Board of Higher Education. SB 19 passed the Senate floor last month, 20-4. Legislative approval is the next step in the accreditation process. I'm asking for your approval of this bill, which will be a big help, particularly to teachers who are pursuing further education. Thank you for taking my testimony.
Thank you very much, Senator Ward. Are there any questions for Senator Ward? I don't see any hands up, Senator. You got up easy.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, next we have Rep. Horrigan. Welcome to education. Go ahead, please.
Oh, welcome. It's good to be back. So my name is Timothy Horrigan. I represent Stratford County District 6, which is the towns of Durham and Madbury. And I got way ahead of myself and sent you some written testimony 2 days ago, probably so long ago, you've all probably already read it and forgotten about it. And I was, so I'm certainly in favor of ITLing this bill. I think it's a bad idea. I do feel a little bit sympathetic towards Dr. Olson, the finder of it, because our backgrounds are similar. I have I only went as far as a master's, but I have a master's in English comparative literature from Columbia University, and he managed to stick it out for a doctorate and I think in medieval literature. So certainly hats off to that. He certainly is must be a brilliant guy to have done all that. And it is an interesting enterprise, but I don't think it's really a university or that it should be granted degree granting status. So he's failed to demonstrate its degrees are worth anything, and it's also unclear if it's making any progress towards becoming accredited or to qualifying for federal student loan programs. He does website does say something about how they have their own financing set up, but it would be better to do it through the federal student loan program, which offers a lot more protections to both the lender and the borrower. It has I understand it doesn't need a campus, and campuses are very expensive because it's offering all its classes online, but it's only physical nexus. It's a private mailbox at the UPS store at a strip mall in Nashua. It seems to me university needs more of a physical presence than that. Or actually they have two. I discovered they have like a second mailbox at a second UPS store in Bedford, but that kind of makes it seem even more substantial if they have multiple mailboxes. I was also troubled Dr. Olson, the founder, was publicly threatening a member of this committee, apparently because he didn't like a committee report, which took place in the House calendar in 2019. The committee report, I saw nothing wrong with the committee report, and even if it was, that's not really the proper way for Dr. Olson to disagree with the committee report. And then they've also already been advertising and actively offering a master's of arts degree, which of course the legislature and the Department of Education have not yet granted it authority to offer, and of course it's not accredited too. So even at the previous hearing, this committee for the other bill, HB 513, there is an alumnus step forward, and she had used her degree to get a job at a local community college, and she just flatly said she had a master's degree from Signum, and of course that degree didn't exist yet. They weren't authorized to offer it, and she appeared to be, as far as I could tell, dedicated and skilled educator, but there's certainly a lot of potential for abuse if you have an organization offering, what are basically fictitious graduate degrees. And also, of course, Dr. Olson, he's operating, obviously fair use allows him to use the Tolkien Estates copyright for educational use, but he's describing himself as the Tolkien professor. He has well, not really the degree courses broader ranging, but he has other courses he offers which are entirely about Tolkien's work. And although he doesn't need his permission, that seems a little misleading. I think he's crossed a rather blurry line. So I certainly think it's an interesting enterprise. I just don't think it's at the point yet where we should call the university or where the state of New Hampshire should be authorizing it to offer degrees. So I'm So even though he's a fellow Columbia man, I'm going to recommend that you find SB 19 inexpedient to legislate. Of course, notwithstanding the fact that House has already passed the other bill, which is on its way to the Senate later today. But so I'm not sure what effect an ITL on this bill would have. But I urge you to correct the mistake we made last time and find SB 19 inexpedient to legislate. So thanks very much. And I guess I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Representative Horrigan. Are there any questions for Representative Horrigan? Not seeing any hands. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Thanks.
Okay, next we have Corey Olson. Welcome to education.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm just signed up to be here to answer any questions that anyone might have. I don't have any further to add to my previous testimony and our previous discussion on this bill, but I just wanted to show up to make sure to get the opportunity to answer questions that people might have.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions or discussion for Mr. Olson? Not seeing any hands up in the air. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so that's all we had signed up to testify. Would you like me to read off the total numbers, or would Rep. Shaw like to do that? Okay, so we had 6 supporting, 22 oppose, 0 neutral, and 3 testifying.
Thank you very much. So with that, I'm going to close the hearing for SB 19. Thank you. The next bill which we have in the docket is SB 20. This is an act relative to one-year certificates of eligibility to teach.
Representative Ladd,
Yes. Yes.
could you just explain something to me, because I don't understand? Why is SB 19 and bills that we've already had and gone over came back where it doesn't appear to be any major change? Is there a reason, or I just don't understand the process, Dick?
So what is your question? Please explain it a little bit.
I'm trying to learn the process. I don't understand why a Senate bill is very similar to what we went over, why we see it again.
It's required by their rules, our rules, and by law. Every bill has to be heard within our body unless it doesn't get to us. It came out of that body whether or not passed. So
Okay, so this is a separate. Okay, so just understand, this is like the second bill, the same thing. That's what it is.
it's a second bill, just like we've had second bills on numerous legislation even this year that are on the House side and the Senate side.
Okay.
That's usually done.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we're going to open up now the hearing for SB 20. Oh, excuse me, we're not supposed to start to 9:30. I was just reminded. I'm trying to get out of here today. So we're going to have to hang loose here until 9:30.
Hey, Patty. To
Yes.
answer your question from the snow before, we had 8 inches of snow last year, yesterday.
Whoa.
But this year we're 30 inches down.
Oh.
Yeah, we're 30 inches down from our average over here. So the wells are going to be tough and stuff. I mean, the river's already open next to me.
Yeah.
It's usually iced up for another 2 or 3 weeks. So yeah, we didn't get much.
Was that bad for skiing?
No, skiing they did fine.
Yeah.
You know, a little late starting, but they did fine. They still get some high elevation stuff is still good.
Yeah.
Yeah. But pretty much everything's closed down now. They're not making obviously anymore. But yeah, it was amazing. You know, look outside. We're still snow covered around my house. I got a good 8 to 10 inches all the way around the house.
Oh.
But
Oh.
we're not getting, you know, I'll ship you some if you need it.
Nah. Mm-mm. No. No. No.
Yeah, but 30 inches less than last year.
Wow.
Yep.
Nothing says drought more than no snowpack.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. The point driven wells, they're gonna be suffering again. Yep. Like I said, the river's wide open already. So then that never happens this early. Not gonna be good.
Do you have a well, Sue, in Bedford? No, I have the beauty of Lake Massapequa coming right to my home. Yeah.
We have Poland Springs, but I don't have a well.
Hear us? Can you hear us?
Yeah. I don't see.
Hey, we're going to go ahead now and open up SB 20. This is an act relative to one-year certificates of eligibility to teach. And what I'm going to do, I've been asked by Senator Khan to introduce this bill, and then I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Appleby at the Department of Education to explain that. So with that, my name is Rick Ladd. I'm from Haverhill, New Hampshire. I'm here today to introduce SB 20. This is a bill relative to one-year certificates of eligibility to teach, and we've had many a discussion on the CTE Advisory Council Commission regarding this, and there is need for many of these retired folks that have been working 30, 35 years in industry who may not have a certificate or a degree and a bachelor's degree, but they have all the technician type certificates. And it is the opinion of the advisory council that we move forward with allowing these people to have a one-year certificate to allow them to teach in the various career technical education centers. With that, if the committee doesn't have any objections, I'd like to have Mr. Appleby, Steve Appleby, take it from there.
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Appleby. Welcome to education.
Good morning, and thank you, representatives and Mr. Chair. For the record, Steve Appleby, Division Director at the New Hampshire Department of Education. The purpose of this bill is to line up the requirements in the one-year certificate of eligibility with what's already in statute and rule for a full license. Currently, a CTE teacher is not required to have a bachelor's degree. For example, a welding teacher or a mechanic teacher, auto mechanic teacher, they are required to have typically industry recognized certifications, but not a bachelor's degree. And the one-year certificate of eligibility, as it currently is the law, prohibits districts from using this kind of emergency situation certificate to fill a position. By changing the law to drop the bachelor's requirement just for the CTE specialty area teachers, this would allow districts to fill their gaps or their needs for emergency situations. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Appleby.
Any questions from the committee members?
Representative Woodcock has his hand raised.
Representative Woodcock.
Thank you, Chairman Ladd. Mr. Appleby, thank you for taking my question, just for my own edification, if I may. So you're talking about CTE bringing in a welding instructor, for example, no academic training, perfectly fine, has the skills to do that. Is there, and this is a one-year piece. I have two questions. What happens after 1 year? And two, is there any point in time where these folks have to take any teacher student skills in terms of technology and those things, and how to use that type of program with students? Teacher training, basically.
Yep. Thank you for the question, Representative. Great questions. So it's the first question, as I understand it, was what happens after the 1 year?
Yes, sir.
Yep. And this 1 year eligibility is a one-time per person only certificate. So if John or Sally Smith receives one of these and takes a position in a district, once the year is up, they are no longer eligible to teach unless they have pursued and gained full certification, a full license, or are in the intern license process. So if they don't do that, they're out of a job.
Okay, and then if I may follow up, Representative Ladd?
Yes, you have two questions.
Thank you. Mr. Appleby, so the second start, they may take one of the alternative tracks to get certified after that?
Yes, and in fact, very often they begin that process while working in the 1 year time period.
Okay, thank you so much for clarifying that for me. I appreciate it. Thank you, Representative Ladd.
Thank you. I do not see any other hands raised. Is that correct? No other questions for Mr. Appleby?
I don't see any either.
Seeing none? Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I'll ask a quick question for Mr. Appleby.
Proceed.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chair. And thanks very much, Mr. Appleby, for testifying this morning. I don't have the exact terminology in front of me, but I know we've referenced it other places, and it was kind of a big deal 2 years ago when the Department of Education brought forward a new standard of, and I'm just trying to, whether it was a standard of ethics,
a code of conduct.
Code of conduct. Thank you. And I was wondering if that code of conduct will apply to these teachers.
Thank you, Representative. Another great question. Yes, the code of conduct, code of ethics do apply to these individuals.
Terrific. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further questions, and there is no one else signed up to testify, I will close the hearing on SB 20. And I see that there were 10 signed in support, 0 in opposition, and we had 2 people testifying.
Thank you very much. I am going to go into executive session on this bill, and I'm going to hand the gavel over to Representative Cordelli so I can make a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I would call on you for an motion.
A motion or a motion? A motion. Okay, thank you very much. I'd like to move on to pass on SB 20.
Second. Second by Representative Shaw. Would you like to speak to your motion?
Yes, I would like to very much. The advisory group has worked on this with DOE and with all the various folks that are on that commission. We recognize that any individual who comes on that receives a 1 year or a 5-year certificate must comply with the code of conduct as Representative Luno has. That is required. Anybody has certification, even Paris, which have certification. Further, in talking to the directors of the CTE centers, they recognize the value of this when they're getting down to having to conduct courses. They have folks that in the past that have not got the alternative road completed and are prepared based upon their understandings. And yes, when we asked, what about the methods of how to teach and how to communicate properly, Mr. Rothenberger over at Concord High School, who's the director of that center, indicated that's my job to ensure that I'm supervising and ensuring that the instruction is proper in the classroom, which is exactly right. So I'd like to really encourage us to move this bill on. It is a bipartisan bill, one of which is needed in our career technical education centers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Shaw, would you offer any comments?
No, I agree, and I think it's needed. Thank you.
Thank you. Comments from the committee? Yes, Representative Woodcock.
Thank you, Reverend Cordelli. Just a quick comment. I having had the opportunity to work in 2 vocational schools, plus do my internship there for my master's and be a principal of one. This is a terrific piece, and I support it wholeheartedly, and it will help public school and CTE bringing in qualified staff. Thank you.
Thank you. See no further comments. So, Representative Shaw, Madam Clerk, you take the roll.
Okay, this is ought to pass on Senate Bill 20. Representative Cordelli.
Yes.
Representative Bone.
Yes.
Representative Allard.
Yes.
Representative Lakis.
Yes.
Representative Moffett.
Yes.
Representative Hobson.
Yes.
Representative Andrus.
Yes.
Representative Ford.
Yes.
Representative Leon.
Yes.
Representative Sodi.
Yes.
Representative Myler.
Yes.
Representative Luno.
Yes.
Representative Shaw, yes. Representative Cornell.
Yes.
Representative Tanner.
Yes.
Yes, Representative Tanner.
Yes.
Representative Ellison.
Yes.
Representative Mullen.
Yes.
Representative Lay.
Yes.
Representative Woodcock.
Yes.
20-0. Any objections to consent?
Consent okay with everybody?
Representative Ladd, I'm sorry. Any objections to consent?
No.
No.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you to everybody. I know our CTEs will really appreciate this bill, and it will really assist our getting kids on the right pathways for these technologies and skills necessary for today's careers. With that, we had scheduled, I believe, was there a half hour for this one as well?
Yeah, so we started at 10 with.
So we have 15 minutes here. Once again, we're going to have to wait before we introduce the next bill. The next bill is SB 24, dealing with Brewster Academy. So we will have 15-minute pause again, and we will start this up at 10 o'clock.
Can you guys hear us?
Yes, I can.
I'm wondering if the guys in the room can hear us. They're not. We can't hear them. I don't know if they know that or not.
Yeah, you've done a great job this session in coordinating all this stuff. For somebody who's not done it before, it's
Flattery will get you everywhere.
well, it's not easy to do, and you've done a very nice job. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, this is our second try. We unmuted the machine here and popped back on. It was muted, so I hope everybody can hear us now. We're ready to head with Senate Bill 24, and this is relative to Brewster Academy Charter. And we have Representative John McDonald present. He is one of the sponsors of the bill to introduce. Welcome, John.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the House Education Committee. My name is Representative John T. McDonald, and I represent Cal District 6, which is the community of Wolfboro. Unfortunately, Senator Bradley is tied up with a Senate obligation and asked me to introduce this bill to you today. Senator Bradley would also like to ask me to pass on his continued support of this legislation. SB 24 came over from the Senate with a unanimous ought to pass in committee of 5-0 and a vote of 23-1 in this session. This bill was filed last year in 2020, but was one of the bills that was incorporated into a larger omnibus bill, HB 1234, and did not survive the whole legislative process due to COVID. What this bill simply does, it amends the charter of Brewster Academy so that it can make changes to the charter in accordance with provisions of RSA 292:7. It also increases the membership of Brewster Academy's Board of Trustees. At the present time, Brewster Academy must come before the legislature to make any changes to the charter. And that seems kind of unreasonable where we are in our system of government. There's going to be an individual, Christy Karen, who's the associate head of school of Brewster Academy, and she should be able to explain to you the particular need and requirement that Brewster has for this legislation to be passed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Representative McDonald. Are there any questions for Representative McDonald? Not seeing any hands up. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. Is Representative DeShays there available? Is he here?
Yes, I did. Yep, he's already been promoted. Go ahead.
Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for letting me speak, and thank you to the committee for letting me speak today. I just wanted to voice my support for SB 24, which would would allow Brewster Academy to amend their own charter and increase the number of trustees they have on their board from 25 to 30. This is a very important issue in our community, so then Brewster Academy won't always have to constantly appeal to the House Education Committee and the General Court to be able to make simple amendments to their charter. They would be able to amend their charter like a number of other private schools are around the state. And, throughout the General Court's history over the last, few decades, we've allowed private organizations and private schools to be able to amend their own charters that were granted to them from the state. And so having this kind of autonomy makes it so they're more responsive to their workers, their staff, and our overall community here in Wolfboro. So I encourage the committee to vote ought to pass on this legislation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Representative. Are there questions for Representative DeShays? Not seeing any hands up. You got all three.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Representative Hobson, do we have others in the queue? No.
Yes, we do have Christy Karen as Representative McDonald mentioned. I'm trying to.
If Christy is there available, perhaps she could give us a little bit more understanding of why we have to go from 25 to 30 members.
Yeah. Welcome to education, Christy.
Sorry about that, I was muted. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much. Again, this is Christy Karen. I'm the associate head of school at Brewster. I'd just like to thank Senator Bradley for bringing this legislation forward, to Representative McDonald for his support throughout the process, and also to Representative Deshays for supporting with his comments this morning. Thank you all so much for your time today. Brewster Academy celebrated its bicentennial anniversary last year. Our original charter was granted by the New Hampshire General Court on June 20th, 1820. Today, Brewster serves 350 students from roughly 23 states and 21 countries. 80% of our students are boarding students and 20% are day students from the local area. Over 1/3 of our students receive financial aid support in order to attend the academy. Brewster's mission is to prepare diverse thinkers for lives of purpose. We're proud to serve a truly diverse population by every definition of the word, ethnically, socioeconomically, and cognitively. Brewster has an exceptional board of trustees. It's a forward-thinking group, including 2 current parents, 10 former parents, 4 alumni, 2 grandparents, and 4 friends of the school. Our trustees have really impressive backgrounds. They're recognized leaders in their fields, and they all actively contribute their expertise in service to Brewster. So while the work of the board has been outstanding, there are some composition issues that we're hoping to address with this bill. First, Brewster would like to expand the size of the board from 25 to 30 members. As we continue to expand our range of programs, including some new global programs, we'd like to further add to the range of skill sets on our board. We have run up against the 25-member threshold in the past, and we want to ensure that we don't have to turn away any potential trustees who can contribute to our mission and our vision. We'd also like to eliminate the position held by a representative of the Alumni Association. The Alumni Association is no longer active in a formal traditional sense, but we do have 4 alumni on our board currently, and we will continue to actively seek alumni who represent a range of viewpoints and graduation years. And finally, we are requesting that the legislature grant permission for Brewster's Board of Trustees to manage future amendments to its charter. Rather than approach the legislature every time that a change is needed, the Academy would like to take the same approach that was taken by Dartmouth College in 2003 and by Pinkerton Academy in 2011, in hopes of avoiding using your valuable time for amendments such as board size and composition in the future. So thank you again to Senator Bradley for bringing this bill forward, to Representatives McDonald and Deshays for their support, and to you all for your time this morning.
Thank you very much, Ms. Karen. Are there questions for Brewster Academy? Looks like everybody's got it. Thank you very much.
No, we have Rep. Leon.
Leon.
Oh, yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for taking my question. My question is in regards to referencing the Pinkerton issue. Do you take any public funds? Do you have anybody who is sending town to Brewster Academy, or is this all just privately paid?
We do have local students attending Brewster Academy. We did apply in the local PPP funding this year, as other private schools in our region did. And we do accept Title IIA funding for faculty professional development. That's what I'm aware of. There may be other pieces I'm just not aware of.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there further questions? Not seeing. Thank you very much. Do we have anybody else in the queue, Representative Hobson?
Not that I can see.
Thank you. So we have a summary of the folks that signed in on that bill.
Yep, so we have 3 that signed in support, 2 oppose, 0 neutral, and testifying, I guess we could say 4. Senator Bradley signed up to speak even though he wasn't here, so.
Thank you very much. So with that, I'm going to close the hearing on SB 24, bill relative to Brewster Academy Charter. We have about 6 or 7 minutes left here. I think what I'll do is just open up and go into an executive session for this bill and recognize Representative Cordelli for a motion.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I would like to move pass on Senate Bill 24.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Representative Bone seconds that motion. If you care to discuss your motion, Representative.
I think all the reasons were well laid out in the testimony.
Is there further discussion from Representative Bone? Not seeing you there. Further discussion from members of the committee? Representative Lamb?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to make sure that since there's not a issue of school districts that are sending a huge chunk of students to Brewster Academy, is that correct? And if that's the case, I don't have any problems. I'm just in Derry, we have some issues with transparency. So that was just my question if there might be an issue up there. If not, I have no problem amending the charter.
State, we do have public schools that have done those contracts with various schools like Kane, like Wilderness. So basically, so simply that we're looking to allow the people at Brewster Academy to make those changes rather than have to come to this particular board or to the legislature for all future occurrences of change to their charter.
Okay, thank you. It sounds like there's more transparency there than in Derry, so I'm in favor. Thank you.
So with that, Representative Cordelli,
Just being in the next town, I know that Brewster Academy is very involved in the community, and is certainly a good neighbor within the town of Wolfboro.
thank you. Not seeing any further discussion, Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Sure.
Have a motion. Was it, did you make? Yeah, you seconded the motion.
That's right, I second. I'm sorry.
See, that's work up.
The motion, Ralph, is ought to pass on Senate Bill 24. Representative Cordelli.
Yes.
Representative Bone.
Yes.
Representative Allard.
Yes.
Representative Lakis.
Yes.
Representative Moffett.
Yes.
Representative Hobson.
Yes.
Representative Andrus.
Yes.
Representative Ford.
Yes.
Representative Leon.
Yes.
Representative Sodi.
Yes.
Representative Myler.
Yes.
Representative Luno.
Yes.
Representative Shaw, yes. Representative Cornell.
Yes.
Representative Tanner.
Yes.
Representative Ellison.
Yes.
Representative Mullen.
Yes.
Representative Lake.
Yes.
Representative Woodcock.
Yes.
Representative Ladd.
Yes.
Consent, okay with everyone?
Looks like everybody's good with that.
That's 20 to 0.
20 to 0.
20 to 0.
So with that, I'm closing the executive session on SB 24. Our next session will start at 10:20, and that will be SB 135. Thank you. So we have a few moments here to wait for this one. That's my message to Aaron Tennessee.
Would you like me to mute the room, Representative Glad?
That'd be fine. Thank you.
Mhm.
Are we live? Okay, I think everybody should be able to hear us out there now.
He was a crew chief on Marine One.
That is unmuted, I think.
So we saw some presidential.
Okay, I'd like to go ahead and open up the hearing. Can you hear me out there?
Yeah.
Thumbs up. Okay, it looks like folks can hear us now. I'd like to go ahead and introduce or discuss Senate Bill 135. This is an act relative to the calculation of the cost of an opportunity for an adequate education. And the bill is going to be presented by Senator Aaron Hennessy. Welcome, Aaron.
Good morning, everybody. I am Aaron Hennessy. I am Senator for District 1, and that covers Thornton all the way through Pittsburgh. I'm here to introduce Senate Bill 135. And what this bill does is fix some unforeseen challenges that our schools have had as a result of the pandemic. I'm sure you've all heard from your superintendents that they are concerned with the funding formula for next year because of drops in their average daily membership that they've seen. In addition, they've had a difficult time getting back free and reduced lunch forms from parents or guardians. And both of these have an impact on next year's school funding. So what this bill does is says, if a school for some reason didn't see a drop in average daily membership and was able to get back their school forms and the calculation for the funding is that they'll get more than this year, next year, they'll get that. But if for some reason they've seen a drop in their attendance because of COVID and that they have not received back their free and reduced lunch forms, they will receive the higher of the calculation for next year or the funding that they've received this year. It has a fiscal impact of approximately $45 million. And as we are looking at the federal requirements coming into the state for the funding that the approximately $1 billion New Hampshire is going to receive, but also extra funds that are going directly to our schools. Some of the requirements are requiring a maintenance of effort that the state must fund the 22-23 school years proportional to the spending that they've done 2017 through 2019. So this bill is very important in that we need to increase the school funding for next year to be proportional to what we've done in prior years. I'm happy to take questions. Otherwise, someone from the Department of Education can answer all your difficult questions.
Thank you very much, Senator Hennessy. Are there questions for the senator? Representative Luno.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you very much, Senator Hennessy, for joining us this morning and for introducing Senate Bill 135. I certainly support the what the intention is on this. But the question I have is, I wonder if you could sort of break down the $45 million price tag in terms of the ADMA factor, and is there a cost index factor with this as well?
A cost index factor? Do you mean the inflationary factor that usually goes into the funding formula? No, this is the formula the state uses for next year using this last year's student numbers. So if the inflationary factor is in the formula, then yes, it stays in there.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions for the senator? Not seeing any. You can get back to your finance.
Oh, I'm in Senate session right now. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay. Who is next, Representative Hobson?
Next we had Leslie Want, but I do not see her in the queue. Scott Marion, let's see if, Caitlin Davis is here from the.
Let's hear from the department.
Okay. Whoops. Okay, Ms. Davis, I've promoted you. Welcome to education.
Can you hear us, Caitlin?
I can, thank you. Could you also bring in Mark Manganello?
I could.
Thank you.
Okay, well, welcome, Mr. Manganello.
Good morning, Mark. In fact, I've already talked to you today.
Morning.
There you are.
Okay.
So I'm not sure if Mark has actually testified in front of this committee before. He's been working with finance quite a bit. So just a reminder for those of you who have not met Mark. Mark works over here at the Department of Education now. He did work at the LBA. We're very lucky to have him here now at the department, but that's why he looks familiar. And he's helping us in the Office of School Finance. So he is going to kind of help answer any questions that the committee may have about this bill. One thing I actually do want to bring up before I take any questions is the department has asked for an amendment to this bill. We had sort of an aha in the middle of the night moment about assessments. And we realized that this bill references the assessment of the previous year, 1920, like all of the rest of the data. However, there was not an assessment that was implemented in 1920 that has comprehensive assessment results to be used for the purpose of third grade reading and adequacy. So we would in fact actually, to have an accurate number, need to refer back to the 18 and 19 assessment data. So we did ask for that amendment. We realized it yesterday and we sent it over to Representative Ladd. I'm not sure if you were able to get that figured out or not, but that was just something that we realized. So given that, we'll take any questions. I think Mark is going to kind of try to field them and we'll see how it goes.
Thank you very much, Caitlin. You did mention 1920, and I don't think too many of us are around in 1920. You're talking 2020, right?
Yes, sorry, school year 2019 and 20, like this 2019, 2020.
Okay, I got you there. Seeing that you're there right now, and is Mark going to stay with us throughout this?
Yes.
What I plan on doing here is having folks that would like to speak to the bill as it was introduced by Aaron Hennessy. But we have three amendments here. And I'd like to have Mark stay with us, or even yourself, Caitlin. You may be bouncing back and forth with finance. But I know one of those, Mark, you spoke to, and Mark could explain the 2018-19 data compared to the 2021. Well, 20 was not good data, I guess. So we can get into that, but also we will be talking about all three of those without having to put them on the floor for action. It's going to be a discussion-oriented session. So, Caitlin, do you have anything else to offer us on the bill as it was introduced, or you spoke to the one amendment that you all are involved with? Are you going to speak to that, or are you going to let Mark do that when we get to it?
Yep, so I'm going to let Mark take over. I actually am in another meeting right now, so I'm going to jump back over to the other one, and Mark, I think, has got it completely handled. So I'm in the office across the hall from him if he has anything that actually comes up. So, but I think he's going to know all of the answers.
Okay, so thank you very much, Caitlin, and we'll work with Mark on the rest of this. You have a good time in finance.
Thank you.
About the subject. So have a good one. Okay, we're going to go on and take some testimony from others who are waiting in the queue, and then we're going to get into these amendments following hearing from other folks. So who is next on the docket, Representative Hobson?
Next, we have Jeff Micklinch.
Okay.
I have promoted him. It'll just take a second.
Good morning. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Can, Jeff.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Chairman Ladd, Representative Myler, members of the committee, thank you so much for the opportunity to testify on Senate Bill 5 this morning. For the record, my name is Jeff Micklinch, and I'm the project director of the After School Funding Fairness Project. The aim of Senate Bill 135 is clear, as it seeks to protect against the COVID-19 pandemic's possible impact on school finances. And the need for the bill's enactment is urgent, as communities across New Hampshire continue to weigh difficult budgetary decisions for the coming year. Given the longstanding problems that have plagued New Hampshire's school funding system, as well as the new challenges students, families, and schools now face, I urge the committee to strengthen Senate Bill 135 and to recommend it as ought to pass once amended. Similarly, I urge the House as a whole to act on the bill as quickly as possible. And barring any timely action by the House on this measure as a separate piece of legislation, I would ask you and your colleagues to incorporate its provisions along with other changes in law designed to address an anticipated $90 million shortfall in education aid into the House's version of the fiscal 22-23 budget. This committee is obviously well familiar with the fact that two of the key determinants of the amount of state education aid are their number of students community serves generally, as well as the number of low-income students in that community. Critically, the vast majority of districts in New Hampshire have seen those numbers decline as a result of the pandemic. Just to put specific numbers to it, the Department of Education's November 15th estimates suggest that attendance will decline by about 4% over the past year, while certainly the long-term trend has been towards declining enrollments. A 4% drop is particularly steep. Those estimates also point to a roughly 24% decrease in the count of free and reduced price lunch students. Those figures obviously fluctuate from year to year, but during times of economic hardship like those engendered by the pandemic, you'd expect those numbers to rise, not fall. And those numbers are almost certainly going to rebound as the pandemic wanes and as schools resume in-person classes in the coming year to an even greater extent than they do already. But because of, as you know, the time lag in the formula, barring necessary changes in law, those temporary lower student counts will be used to decide the amount of state aid districts receive in 21-22. As Senator Hennessy discussed, Senate Bill 135 recognizes that the counts we're seeing now aren't likely to reflect the situation schools will face this fall, and comes up with an alternative using the higher of a district's or a town's ADMA over the past 2 years to calculate state education aid. And so certainly while passage of this bill is vital, the bill could be made stronger still in order to preserve the progress that the legislature made in the current budget in bolstering state education aid and targeting it to those cities and towns most in need. The budget agreement reached in the fall of 2019 added two elements to New Hampshire's funding formula for fiscal 21, additional aid designed to assist cities and towns with higher of low-income students, and fiscal capacity disparity aid, which is designed to help municipalities with comparatively low property values. Given that the inequities that these two types of aid were designed to address are going to be just as severe in the coming biennium as they are in the current one, I would ask the committee to amend Senate Bill 135 to extend these two forms of aid for another 2 years. Now, certainly passage of Senate Bill 135 in its present form or an amended form would reduce the need for the potential scale of changes like spending reductions in local schools or higher property tax increases. And obviously municipalities are already grappling with those decisions. Many have made those decisions, but they do have the authority under current law, under RSA 197.3a, to revisit those decisions should additional state education aid become available. So I would just ask, and point out that it's imperative that the legislature send a clear signal to all municipalities as quickly as possible so that they can ready themselves for these meetings and reconsider these decisions before the school year gets underway. So in conclusion, the COVID-19 pandemic has tragically taken the lives of more than 1,000 Granite Staters, disrupted the New Hampshire economy, and upended our daily lives in ways large and small. We shouldn't allow it to continue to have adverse consequences for our schools and the children and families they serve. So once again, I urge the committee to strengthen Senate Bill 135, to recommend it as ought to pass, and to do so as expeditiously as possible. I look forward to working with all of you to try to address these pressing issues, and I'd be happy to try to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Micklinch. I have one question, and I'll just open it up to the committee. Could you please go into a little bit more depth regarding the figure you indicated that our attendance is down 4%, but the 24% decrease in free and reduced numbers. Could you explain that a little bit more, please?
Yeah, so in some ways, that reduction is a good thing. And by which I mean, the reason that 24% reduction is happening is that the federal government, in response to the pandemic, took steps to make it easier for families to obtain needed food assistance. They waived the requirement that people complete the paperwork necessary to receive food assistance. and are in essence providing free lunches to everyone who may want it. However, the downside of that is that paperwork is what the state uses to arrive at its counts for free and reduced price lunch students. And those counts in turn are incorporated into the adequacy aid formula. So that if people aren't filling out that paperwork, and districts have gone to some lengths to try to get them to do so, they're not going to show up in those counts. But once the federal government ends this program, people are still going to be in need, and they're going to begin completing that paperwork once again. So you'll see a very rapid uptick in those counts. But because of the lag in the formula, those kids will still be there and need to be served, but will have suppressed aid as a result of this change.
Jeff, I have one follow-up to what you just
Sure.
spoke to. So schools that have the free and reduced, they all have free and reduced programs within it. Are they providing the free and reduced program to all students at no cost to students? Are they doing any paperwork during this pandemic?
I would defer to staff from the Department of Education about the delivery and the paperwork. I do know, based on prior testimony and other hearings, that there have been some communities that have, gone to great lengths to try to get this paperwork completed. And there are others that just simply don't have the capacity. So there may be varying efforts. But I think even in places where they have tried to make the effort, that the take up is still relatively, the completion rate is still relatively low.
Thank you. Are there questions for Mr. Micklinch? Representative Leno.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you very much, Mr. Micklinch, for joining us this morning. I was wondering if you could talk with us a little bit about the connection between concentrations of students and families with lower socioeconomic means and the sort of expected costs that a school district would incur for educating its students.
Absolutely. So, there is a very direct connection in that lower income students tend to have greater needs, and therefore schools need greater resources to address them. The current formula, recognizes that in installing the free and reduced price lunch counts in there. I will say that I touched upon sort of existing inequities as it relates to these issues. The Commission to Study School Funding, as you well know, looked at these issues at some length over the past year. And the conclusion that they arrived at is that the current system is inequitable from both a student and taxpayer perspective. And just to quote the report, the districts serving the highest proportion of students who are economically disadvantaged spend less on average compared with districts serving the fewest such students. Moreover, districts with the least property wealth per student impose the highest local education tax rates to be able to fund their children's education. So given that, there's certainly a need to continue with additional aid and fiscal capacity disparity aid until longer term reforms are put in place.
And then a follow up on that, Mr. Chair.
Yes, you may.
Yeah, thank you very much, and thanks again for answering that. I was wondering if you could also sort of extend that analysis towards really the student equity element of how well these students that come from higher concentrations or I should say students where, let me say it another way, districts where there are higher concentrations of low income families and how that reflects upon student performance.
Yeah, I think there's a direct relationship between those two. And again, I'd be happy to sort of provide reference to the Commission's study report. I don't have it at hand here, but I looked at that very question, I believe, and established or sort of underscored the fact that that districts that tend to spend less tend to have students who are having trouble performing, even though there is that greater need.
Thank you.
Further questions for Mr. Micklinch? I might add that in follow-up to the question you just asked, Representative Leno, we know with those communities that have a poverty level, property valuation of $660,000 or less, we have 85% of the students in those districts are functioning on quartile 1 or 2 of the proficiency test. where we have then 15% in 3 and 4. That's above the bottom. So there's a direct relationship between, the equalized property valuation, which is also associated oftentimes with poverty, free and reduced counts. There is a real good correlation here between achievement and wealth. Are there any other questions for Mr. Micklinch? Thank you very much, Jeff.
Thank you.
Representative Hobson, who is in the queue next? Orrin.
Sorry, next we have Leslie Want, and I've promoted her. She'll be here in a minute. I hope she'll be here in a minute.
I am here. Hello.
Oh, good. Okay. Welcome to education.
Oh, thank you so much. It was not easy to find this link this morning for some reason. But anyway, I also want to let you know that I believe we.
Leslie, can you turn your volume up? We're having a hard time hearing here in the committee room.
Okay. Maybe if I just put my mouth a little closer, does that help at all?
It's a little bit better.
Okay, I wanted to let you know too that Dr. Goldhart, I believe is also in and would like to speak at some point. He's our superintendent here in Manchester, but I'm the vice chair here at the Manchester City School District. And we are strongly in support of Bill 135. Our district will lose a great deal of money if we use the attendance numbers from this year as opposed to using them from one of the previous 2 years. So we are strongly in support of this. We stand to right now with the reduction adequacy aid. We're having fewer students stand to lose $1.2 million here in Manchester. And as you all know, in Manchester, we have some of the neediest students in the state with high numbers of free and reduced lunch students and high numbers of students that are in the EL population. We also stand to lose $4 million in reduced aid from our free and reduced lunch. So that's also something we're hoping the Senate will consider fixing for next year. But I would also ask, if possible, if you can promote Dr. Goldhart to speak. I'm sure you'd be interested in hearing what he had to say.
Okay, yes, he's on my list. I can promote him if that's okay, Representative Ladd?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay. Good morning, Mr. Goldhart.
Thank you for having me. I just want to reiterate, as the superintendent of our largest school district, the positive impact this bill would have for us. We have a great number of students who do qualify for free and reduced lunch, but due to the current situation where everybody is pretty much qualified, we have not been able to get those applications back, but we know the students are still here. And our enrollment has dropped this year. However, most of that enrollment drop was in kindergarten and first grade. And we think many of these students will return next year when we're back to it, we hope, a more normal year. And I like this bill because it helps districts like us be held harmless. And as Vice Chair Want had shared, we have very high need students, and these funds make a dramatic impact because we know Title I funds will be cut for us because of the free reduced lunch numbers. And so this will help us a lot. And I appreciate this bill and the effort that has been put into it to help districts like ours so that we can serve our students in the best way possible. So we strongly support it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John. Are there questions for the superintendent of schools in Manchester?
Rep. Luno.
Yes, Representative Lakers.
Oh.
Yes, I have a question. Can you explain where those students went?
I wish I could explain where all of them have gone. The problem is with kindergarten, we don't know where they were to start with. But when we look at the numbers, that had the biggest drop, where our normal numbers for kindergarten were much lower than they've been every year. And I know we didn't have that big of a drop in births that year. So I think there was a lot of concern about having kids in school because of COVID. Now, I do know our enrollment is dropping, just like the whole state. That is true. But it is not the high number that we've had this year.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Further questions? Representative Luno.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chair. And thanks very much, Dr. Goldhart, for joining us this morning. It's great to see you again. I hadn't even connected the, you know, the fact of a reduction in free and reduced price lunch and receipt of federal Title I funds. And I was wondering if you could sort of talk a little bit more about that, how that affects Manchester, and maybe, and I know it's hard to sort of calculate, but how that could be projected as a statewide loss in federal dollars to support public education.
Yeah, I don't have the exact figures for me, the Title I, but it is dramatic for us because it's based upon free and reduced lunch, and because we don't have those total numbers like we've had before, our Title I funds are going to drop by at least 40 or 50% or more this next year for us. And my guess is other districts will have dramatic losses as well, because the free and reduced lunch numbers are not the same. And this will hurt us a lot. And so what you're doing is going to help us dramatically. And then we hope by the next year, when we can get those free and reduced numbers where they should be, then the Title I funds will come back. But yes, on the federal side, there will be a drop.
And a follow up on that, Mr. Chair. Yeah, and if you could just sort of refresh my memory, how districts use Title I funds.
They're used in multiple ways. We use them for additional instructors. We use them for additional materials. We use them for additional professional learning for schools that are Title I. We use them for additional other supports, but the most of the cost is in additional instruction and additional material.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Superintendent, I have a question of you, Rick Wyatt. I've been an administrator. I know how Title I funds are so important to a school district, especially for helping remedial situations. Can you tell me one, I asked this question of another individual regarding the free and reduced meal applications. And I know of some districts that just have provided free meals to everybody. You've indicated you're down a significant percentage here. Did you get any applications back, or if you tried to get applications? And I know this is a real issue. I'd just like to know whether you were required to get these applications out, or were you given the latitude by the state or the feds that you didn't have to do so?
The latitude was continued through the rest of the year to provide it for all, but we've continued to reach out to get applications. We're not stopping. The problem has been we're not getting them back, even though we've tried in multiple methods. And we're getting people to take advantage of the lunches, but we know they qualify, but we need the paperwork. And we're still trying. We want to get more.
Representative Nyler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure whether this question is to Dr. Goldhart or to our representative from the department, but this issue of knowing where these students are in free and reduced lunch is not just within this state. The federal government may have some understanding or feedback of this problem. Has there been any note from the federal government regarding latitude in dealing with this topic, since it's obviously all over the country, not just in this state?
I know our board sent a letter to our congressional delegation on this very issue, And then my national association, the National Association for Superintendents, has been lobbying as well at the federal level because it is a national issue where all districts across the country are going to have Title I reductions this year because of this exact problem.
Mark, have you heard anything from the feds on this?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Just recently, I think like a week or two ago, the feds announced for the title programs within the Department of Education, we can use the best available FNR data. So they gave us flexibility to fix this problem on the federal funding side for schools. But you're right, it is a national issue. SB 135 seeks to fix it for the state issue as far as how it's impacting adequacy, but the federal issue for the title programs has been resolved at this moment.
Mark, I'd like to follow that question up that Representative Myler had. I think this is a serious issue for all public schools throughout the country. I have 4 grandchildren across the river in Vermont, and they have not had to pay for meals this year. They've been provided by the school district. All kids are receiving it over there. So how is that going to impact their Title I monies? Is it just that the feds are going to allow us to go back to like 1819, those that year, or 1920, which way we have to go to?
So my understanding is they've given flexibility. So best available data. So the best available data, the 2019-2020 data should be pretty good. It depends on how Vermont manages their data systems, but Vermont should have the same flexibility that New Hampshire has as far as the federal program.
Thank you. Are there further questions for the superintendent from Manchester? You might want to hang with us in case we have more questions. Representative Hobson, who's next in the queue?
Okay, well, actually, Rep. Luno signed up to speak, and I didn't know if you want to take this opportunity, Rep. Luno?
So I'm gonna defer to when the chair wants to introduce amendments, but I do see Dr. Cascadden has her hand up.
Okay. Oh, is that the Corinne? Okay, I wasn't sure who that was. Okay, go ahead, Dr. Cascadden. Let's see if there she is. Okay. Welcome to education.
Oops. Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you, committee members. I am Dr. Corinne Cascadden. I'm a 45-year educator with 32 years served as a school principal and a school superintendent. So I'm very familiar with school budgets, primarily for the city of Berlin. I urge you to support Senate Bill 135, along with its proposed amendments that you will soon hear, 1012 and 1020. Currently, we have crippling school budgets in the North Country school districts, namely Berlin, Groveton, Colebrook, White Mountain, and others. It is critical for school operations to have the fiscal disparity aid and as well as additional aid for free and reduced counts in the next biennium. Berlin has closed 3 buildings in my tenure, due in part to enrollment and in part to financial capital. So a couple of years back, the Berlin School Board initiated a Solve Education funding campaign because we're in such dire straits. And yet that hasn't been really seen by the legislature. And the reason for that is you need to understand that the city of Berlin has about 32 to 35% of taxable property in the city of Berlin, which leaves an estimated 65% of the city of Berlin is tax exempt because of prisons, federal and state buildings. So you really can't raise the revenue. I currently pay $39.52 per thousand. In 2019, the district closed the last elementary school and had to eliminate a career and technical education administrator position because we just could not raise the funding. How can students have equitable opportunities when there's no capacity to grow or adapt to the New Hampshire workforce with our students? Please take a close look at the local communities and their capacity to raise local property taxes based on the property within that community. By not approving or amending Senate Bill 135 and the amendments, I believe you're declaring it's okay for inequitable public schools. And if you know me, I've fought for this equity for quite a few years now, and it really gets discouraging. And in the meantime, while people are waiting and studying this issue, things become worse and worse. I had the pleasure of serving on the School Funding Commission, which really has data and research that should be invaluable to the state legislators on how to make our public schools equitable. I'd like to thank Senator Hennessy for representing District 1, and thank you, House members, for taking a few minutes to listen to me. I just missed the sign up at 8 o'clock by about 5 minutes, so thank you, Representative Luna, for letting me in. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Are there questions for the Superintendent Berlin?
I don't serve as the superintendent of Berlin anymore.
Oh, you're not?
No, I finished in Littleton last year.
Oh, Littleton. Okay, that's even closer. Okay, April. No.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you very much, Dr. Cascadden, for your time this morning. I hope you'll be able to hang on with us as we go through the amendments as well. But speaking about just the underlying bill, Senate Bill 135, does that bring us back to FY21 funding, the current school year, with the equitable grants that were put into the last state budget, or is this more of a baseline to FY19, more like FY20, so sort of more like 2 years ago?
Do you have a question there, Representative? No, I was in another side conversation here.
Yeah, I may have not got Dr. Cascadden. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. So I have a question for you with regards to the bill and as it stands right now. My understanding, based on your testimony, is that without the amendments, this doesn't make school districts whole to the current state funding. This really only brings makes them whole to sort of like funding from 2 years ago by at least looking at pre-pandemic enrollment levels, but it does not have the two equitable grants. That does not include the two equitable grants I think you were referring to for low property valuation and for student equity through free and reduced price lunch.
Yes, that is correct, because you got to understand, I mean, 2 years ago, the cost of salaries, materials, and programs was, 2 years ago. And so now you're talking moving forward, without the additional aid to increase for cost increases of expenses, you got to lay off staff to be able to make up the difference to operate less than you did 2 years ago, because the funding has not kept up with the cost. I don't know if that answers your question, but
I think it does.
Yeah.
Thank you, Corinne.
Yeah.
Further questions? Representative Hobson, who is next in the queue? Do we have Jerry Frew there?
Yes, we do. Carl Ladd was scheduled to speak and he's not here. Let's see if Mr. Frew, I'm going to promote you to panelist. Good morning, Mr. Frew.
Good morning. Thank you, Representative Hobson, for letting me in the House. And thank you, Chairman Ladd and members of the committee for entertaining what will be very short testimony today. As Corinne and John and Jeff Micklinch have very eloquently illustrated in their testimony. By the way, my name is Jerry Frew, and I'm the Associate Executive Director of the New Hampshire School Administrators Association. And we do fully appreciate Senator Hennessy and Representative Luno listening to our concerns that have been pretty eloquently put forth by Jeff Micklinch and reiterated with the testimony of John and Corinne. This disparity aid and the holding harmless provision due to the loss of funds by free and reduced lunch is so critical to our most struggling communities. And we really support SB 135 as the proposed amendments. The most struggling communities and most struggling students are the ones who will benefit the most from a positive action on this legislation. And so we encourage its support. And I believe that there'll be plenty of information shared moving forward regarding to specific impacts of specific communities. But this loss of revenue for school districts is dramatic in those communities that need it most. And so again, we appreciate the sponsors' support and would really appreciate the support of this committee in moving the amended piece of legislation forward. Thank you.
Are there questions for Mr. Fruit? Jerry, I have one question for you. Last year, it was last year or the year before that, the New Hampshire School Boards Association put out an advisory to school districts regarding the use of free and reduced additional aid and the fiscal capacity disparity aid. Seems known it was a one-time deal. And to the best of your knowledge, have most districts used this money for one-time issues, or have they had to use this money for long-term, contract or other lease type issues?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chairman. Without having specific knowledge, I would generally say that districts have used that one-time money in a one-time fashion and following that advice. Obviously, none of us a year ago could see what was happening, or when the School Boards Association put that memo out, what the impact would be moving forward. But I believe that most school districts have been extremely prudent in their use of funds and not committing, future obligations on behalf of local taxpayers based on that advice that they received.
Are there further questions for Mr. Fruit, School Board Association? No? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Representative Hobson, are there others waiting?
No, we have Representative Luno is last. We had Scott Marion, but he has not been in the meeting today. So that's it.
Okay, so where we're going to go next with this discussion is that we do have 3 amendments here. I'm going to start out first with the amendment. You should have received this one from House Community Services or from Jennifer Ford. It's Amendment 1010H. It was written by the Department of Education, has my name at the top of it. So this is an amendment which deals with 3rd grade reading scores, and also it identifies with all the issues which we talked about today. And taking the higher of the ABMA counts based upon either 2018-19 or the 2020-21 years. Mark, do you have a little bit of information you can share with us, some of the rationale for this particular amendment?
Yep. So for the 3rd grade reading differential aid component of the adequacy formula, we use testing assessment data. And so in the spring of 2019, we have really clean, what we call normal data. In the spring of 2020, the assessment was waived, so we don't have data. And then going forward, if we look at this spring coming up, it's unclear. There's uncertainty about how good the data is going to be with the assessment this spring. What the participation will be, we don't know. So what this amendment does is to, when we do the calculation for fiscal year 22, we'll have what the intent of this legislation likely is to have clean data to look at. So that's what this fix seeks to do.
Thank you very much, Mark. So everybody in the committee, you have an opportunity to ask Mark a question if you want at this point in time. Basically, it's going to look at the higher of the ADMA counts, and that's most likely going to be 2018-19. That would we be basing our future budget off of. Okay, with that, I like.
And Rick?
Yes.
Yeah, and that would apply specifically to the third grade reading.
That's correct.
Great.
That's part of differentiated aid. Yes. Okay, so what I'd like to do next is we'll take these amendments in numerical order. So you have both of them. Why don't you start out, Representative Luno, with your first one?
No, great. Thanks very much. And if it's okay with the chair, I'll probably talk about one, then the other, and then sort of look at the fiscal impact of both of them. But I do have that broken out separately. So thanks very much, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Bringing forward two amendments. The first one being Amendment 2020-1012H, and I believe I sent sort of an advance copy out to members of the committee last evening, followed up with another email this morning. What 1012H does is restores the fiscal capacity disparity equitable grant, which was part of the FY21 school funding package as included in the current biennium budget under House Bill 4. And what the amendment does is a couple things. It extends that fiscal disparity grant through the rest of the current biennium, FY22 and FY23. And it also updates the parameters used to calculate this grant based upon the fact that the Department of Revenue Administration has updated information on property values statewide. And so just to briefly describe what the grant does is it provides a little additional state dollars, about $50 million in total to school districts by virtue of their member municipalities that basically have lower than state average equalized property valuation per pupil, and its property valuation times property tax rate, obviously that generates tax dollars used to fund public schools. So when, as Dr. Cascadden was saying, when you've got communities that only have 30% of their or 35% of their properties, as taxable properties, it suppresses total property valuation, and communities like that, tend to have to work. And when I say work, I mean pay property tax rates that are between 3 and in some cases 10 times higher than other towns across the state. So the fiscal capacity disparity equitable grants, like I said, it's about $50 million in total, same as it is in FY21, are directed to these communities that just have to work super hard, harder than most, to generate the local tax dollars, or the local revenues they need to fund their public schools, and districts can use them, ways they want. I mean, some of them need to put it towards property tax relief. Some of them, as Dr. Frew was saying, are putting it towards one-time expenses, and others have to put it towards operating expenses. I mean, these are all things that school districts deal with, and but it's you know, it's directing state dollars to where they're needed most. The next amendment is restores the second part of the equitable grants that were included in the 2020-21 state budget, and so this is amendment number 1020H, and the second grant is tied to concentrations of higher concentrations of free and reduced price lunch student population. And so as Mr. Micklinch was talking about, there's a very well understood and strong correlation between the cost of education and higher concentrations of students who live in low socioeconomic conditions. And so what this grant does is, as opposed to the other one, which was sort of a taxpayer equity and student equity, this is squarely a student equity type of grant, and again directs approximately $11 to $12 million statewide to districts that have higher percentages of students that come from low socioeconomic backgrounds. Helps those districts address those higher costs that they have. And as the chair was also mentioning earlier during the hearing, there's a very strong correlation between poverty, low socioeconomic status. I believe Rick also talked about property valuations and student outcomes. And like I think a lot of us feel we've got a lot to be proud of when it comes to public education in the Granite State, but unfortunately it's just not everywhere. And so being able to direct state dollars to where they're needed most is it's good for students and it's good for property taxpayers. And next so everybody's got copies of these two amendments, right? We're good on that. I wanted to sort of move forward to a report that was prepared by the Office of the Legislative Budget Assistant, and it's dated November 24th, 2020. And it's preliminary, and stuff may have wiggled around a little bit since then, but I think at least as far as the grand totals, I think it's really accurate. But it's a town by town that shows what the state grant is to school districts in FY21, so the current year, versus what they would be in FY22 based on current law. And statewide, you can see that the state grant for public schools goes down by nearly $90 million. And so Senate Bill 135, including the amendments, is directed to closing this gap. And what Senator Hennessy was talking about during the introduction is a big part of this gap. About 35–40% of it is due to artificially suppressed enrollment numbers, the ADMA numbers, due to the pandemic. So being able to rely on fall 2019, the greater of fall 2019 or fall 2020 is going to make a lot of difference for school districts, and that gets you about, well, I think what Senator Hennessy said is about $45 million. So it gets you maybe not quite halfway to this. It also includes about $12 million of that 45. About $12 million is a statutory index increase in costs that are applied to the base adequacy numbers and the differentiated aid numbers. So Senate Bill 135 is introduced, get you part of the way there, about, well, if you roll back the cost index, get you about a third of the way there. These two amendments get you the rest of the way there. And that's what I want to sort of draw your attention to next. So the LBA shows the $90 million deficit, and now we get to a Luno spreadsheet. So this is not an official LBA spreadsheet. I certainly don't want to represent it as being anything other than just for comparison purposes, just so that we can sort of see what these two amendments would cost. But does everybody have a copy? Know what I'm referring to right now? It's a spreadsheet. I think it says SB 135 with amendments for equitable grants for comparison purposes only. Sent it out last night and again this morning. And like the LBA spreadsheet, it's a town by town. And in the first part of the spreadsheet is taken right from Department of Education data. You can see the two columns for the 2019 ADMA, the 2020 ADMA, and then the similar things for the free and reduced price lunch ADMA, and from 2019 and again from 2020. You can see how it selects the higher of the two for each of those categories. So this is taking us right through Senate Bill 135 is passed in the Senate. And then moving to the right-hand side of the spreadsheet, you can see the two red columns are the equitable grants for free and reduced price lunch for FY21. And that comes to a little under $12 million, $11.73 million. And then the FY21 equitable grant for fiscal capacity disparity aid, which comes to $47.5 million. So altogether, it's about $60 million. And both those grants disappear on June 30th of this year. So that's $60 million that our school districts will lose in equitable grants. Again, equitable grants to improve student equity and taxpayer equity in districts that need it most. And then you can see in the two blue columns right next to each what the amendment 1020H does in terms of restoring and extending the free and reduced price lunch equitable grant. It's funny going down through it. I mean, I just applied the formula calculations are sort of at the top of the column, and it comes down nearly dollar for dollar for what was in the DOE report. So that made me feel really good that I actually got the formula right in my spreadsheet. On the next two columns, you can see something similar with the fiscal capacity equitable grant. The amendment does update some of the parameters in there. So because based on guidance that Mark, I think you gave me the guidance yesterday that we'd probably be that the department would be using 2019 equalized valuation data from the DRA. So obviously 2019, they're higher valuations than in 2018. So we updated some of these parameters from the low of $350,000, updated that to 420, and updated the high end from $1 million to $1,050,000. And it comes in right around the same price tag. I mean, it's a little bit more, but obviously this is just modeling. These aren't final numbers, but just to show what it would mean for towns and school districts across the state. So the way to read these is that those red columns, that's what they're getting this year. And if the two amendments aren't passed, then they would get 0 for FY22 and FY23. So in some cases they might get a little bit more based on changes in valuation or free and reduced price lunch. In some cases they might get a little bit less. So it's not a perfect, it's not identical to what it was in FY21, but it's formula driven. It's very close. And if we don't do something like it, the answer is 0. So, Rick's heard me say it a million times. I hope we all agree that when looking at town by towns, you need to use some discipline and not just go to your town first, but to see what's happening in Manchester, see what's happening in Berlin, see what's happening in Pittsfield. How about, Newport, which is 10 miles up the road 15 miles up the road from where I'm sitting right now, and Claremont, and see what it means for those most, districts that have some of the highest challenges across the state, whether that's in property valuation or poverty or both. And, and do that first and then turn to your own, home district. Too, because I understand that's important. Anyway, finally, what I want to mention is that all of this follows on the heavily bipartisan work that done during the last session, where in particular Representative Ladd and I worked very closely together in developing this package of equitable grants, the free and reduced price lunch grant as part of Amendment 1020, the fiscal capacity disparity equitable grant as part of what's contained in Amendment 1012, and we put these things into, back then it was called House Bill 709 in 2019, and it passed our committee. Strong bipartisan vote, ought to pass on a vote of 17-2. Came to the floor of the House, passed 262 to 82, and so this is a package that I hope can continue to be unifying in terms of our recognition of the need for the state to support its public schools, in particular schools that have the highest amount of need, and then I guess I'll sort of wrap up things there. I know people probably have questions. Well, where's the money gonna come from? First of all, I think this is a policy decision for the House Education Committee. But if you're looking about where the money is going to come from, House Ways and Means just up the revenue estimate last week, increased it by $134 million. Have not allocated that anyway. In fact, I think it's all allocated to the rainy day fund. There's a estimated surplus in the Education Trust Fund of between $21 and $44 million come the end of this school year. So I have confidence that the funds are there. I have confidence that property taxpayers are going to want to see this done, and I think it's in the best interest of students in our state.
Thank you very much, Representative Bruno. I just want to chip in a few words that when we're looking at these amendments, I'm looking at them in terms of policy considerations right now. If you were to look, for example, at Amendment 1012, that's I believe the one that someone spoke to first, dealing with fiscal capacity disparity aid, you're going to see some numbers there where we're talking about equalized valuation, property valuations. We've batted these numbers around over the last several years. In fact, we even batted around earlier this year in HB 608, where this fiscal capacity type formula was within that bill. We just didn't have the time to play with numbers and try to get it right. But I know there are a few differences here when we're looking at, where, I see in 10 and 12, it's $420,000 or less property valuation. We've seen others before, which have been $600,000 or less valuation, and going up to another upper level where it cuts off. Usually it's over $1 million, $1 million, 1.1, 1.14. This one breaks off at a little over 1. The policy is that we recognize and understand that there are districts out there that need support, that are unable to raise this locally and to remain and eliminate the disparities and inequities. That was one of the rationale or policy decisions we put in 608. Also, HB 242, which went over to out of this committee and went to a second committee, 242 mentions fiscal capacity disparity right within it. So we're all recognizing that we need to do something with this. So I don't know if I necessarily agree with all the figures. I haven't had a chance to play with the figures yet, but the policy here is accurate. And I've sat down and talked with Mark earlier this year regarding this type of formula, so we've done that earlier. And in regard to the one-time money that we're talking about there with the free and reduced and the equalized property valuation, that comes up to right a little over 59 million, 59.2, call it, whatever, $60 million. That is money which has allowed some of the districts to do what they needed to do, but it also is created to eliminate those disparities. And we do know there's a relationship between, achievement and poverty. The question I have for you, Representative Luno, is that we also recognize that there's inequities and disparities even amongst some communities that have the wherewithal. So how do we account for those, like we tried to do in 242, and I don't know if that has all the answers in it, but we tried to identify how to support a school district that might even be a district which keeps their sweat, but they also, we know, have pockets of 30% of the kids are not functioning at a level. Do they get any support and those disparities within those districts is oftentimes between subgroups within the district, which that's where we need to really improve within this entire state. So that question's for you, Dave.
Yeah, no, I'd be happy to take that. Thanks very much, Rick, for laying that out. But that's actually what the House bill, the amendment 1020H contemplates. So this is the free and reduced price lunch equitable grant. And if you go to the page 6 of that spreadsheet, the Luno spreadsheet, you'll see, and I'm just going to pick on one of our beautiful Lakes region towns, Wolfboro, and there's an excess swept town. They're not obviously receiving any fiscal capacity disparity grant, but you can see that at least based on the model that I ran on this, because of their almost 29% free and reduced price lunch student population of the 700 students, they would receive an additional $42,000 in an equitable grant. And that's consistent with what we did in House Bill 709, and it's consistent with what we're proposing in Amendment 1020H.
Thank you. Are there questions now from the committee? Representative Lakers.
Thank you. I went and I was looking at Berlin because we had been talking about Berlin. And I'm noticing that they actually have an increase in students but they lose about $2 million. And I'm wondering, I'm looking at both sets. According to yours, they increase in students, and according to the estimated one from the state, they're losing about $2 million. And I'm wondering how much of that is their loss of their estimate of free and reduced students, and how much of that is because of the additional one-time aid that is included in that.
Great. Thank you for the question, Representative Lekas. So looking at the LBA spreadsheet, you can see, as you've pointed out, Berlin loses approximately $2 million in state aid. And then if you go back to the Luno spreadsheet and look at Berlin, you can see that that $1.6 million of that $2 million is from the Equitable Fiscal Capacity grant, and another $210,000 is from the enhanced Equitable Free and Reduced Price Lunch Grant. So of that $2 million, about $1.85 million of that is due to the grants that these two amendments would restore.
Thank you.
Further questions? It's a discussion amongst the committee here. Okay, I know we kind of diverged away from our hearing process, but we had nobody else there for the hearings, and I think that folks needed to have this explanation. We've been battling this particular issue for years, and we are, because of the pandemic, it's really hastened the need to recognize that it's got to be fixed somehow here. So,
Rick, thanks. I think it might be, I mean, we are sort of blending hearing with work session right now, and I really appreciate that, given the importance of and the timeliness of this. But I was wondering if we could talk a little bit about how a multiple amendments can be considered by a committee, and what that results in, and if maybe we could even get Mark to weigh in on the compatibility of these three amendments with each other.
okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to close this hearing, and then from that we'll go into a discussion on what we have in front of us on SB 135. And we're not going to take any action because I think there's a lot of questions folks need to be considering and looking at here. So I'm at this point in time, I am not seeing any other folks to testify. I'm closing down the hearing for 135 and opening up right now. What was the count there? Do you have that, Representative Shaw, for the number of people that signed in and support or opposed, and that we can mention that? Or Representative Hobson, do you have it?
Okay, so there were, Rep Shaw, maybe you could just double check my figures. We had 389 in support.
Yeah.
6 oppose, 0 neutral, and we had originally scheduled 7 to testify, but we had, if you include the 2 from the school, from the Department of Education and Dr. Corinne, that would be 10.
Thank you very much.
Is that right, Rep Shaw? Yeah.
So I counted 2 of them together, Caitlin and Mark.
Okay.
And Nolo, so.
9.
You say the last one was?
Dr. Cascade?
I had her, but I only have 7.
Okay, I did not see Dr. Cascade in as a let's see. Is it Aaron Hennessy, Leslie Want, Scott Marion did not testify, but he had scheduled to testify. Jeff Micklinch, David Luno, Carl Ladd, did not testify, but Jerry Frew did. And 2 from the department, and Corinne, Dr. Kess, I missed her last name.
Did you get John Goldhart?
Yeah.
Oh, yes, have that one as well.
Okay, so we've got a number there. What's it? 8, 9, 7? We're in the ballpark, okay, folks. We got it down in the record here. I think
But let's discuss finances.
9. So this hearing is closed, and now I'm opening it up to discussion as a committee of the whole to be looking at and discussing the school funding issue associated with 135. Okay, is there a discussion amongst anybody here right now? Yes, Representative Bowen.
You mentioned we have 3 amendments. Would it be possible then to, problem is we vote on amendments, the last one, in fact, and looking at it, there might be some overlap and some of which one works, which one doesn't. So wouldn't it be feasible to have, well, let's make one amendment Ray after we give them the wording that we want?
Well, yes, and also, of course, we don't have, in one point, we don't have an official, spreadsheet. That we, and Representative Luno, I've talked with him just, prior to this, and he's going to be requesting that right off here. So I think that, yeah, if we're going to do something, we're going to have to kind of gel these amendments into one amendment.
So, yeah, so thanks, Rick. I think that was, I think what Ralph's asking was sort of along the lines of what I was sort of putting out a little while ago, which is the steps forward for the committee for a committee when it's facing multiple amendments, and what because I think you can vote on the amendments. I know we're not going to exec today, but after a committee has approved multiple amendments, doesn't that then create a committee amendment, one merged amendment?
Yes, that's what I understand. We do have the clerk online here with us right now. Is Paul Smith there?
I believe that the clerk that you see in our meeting is actually Rep Shaw's workstation.
So
Okay, that's Representative Shaw. Okay, all right, Shaw.
I have a question.
Yes, go.
The part 16 and 16A is on 3 different amendments, and they all say a different thing. Maybe you could clarify which one is right. They all say something different.
Where are you now?
Okay, on the first one, on 1012, it says, down to line 26, paragraph 1 of section 236 of this act shall take effect June 30th, 2021. And then line 27 says, paragraphs 2 and 3 of this section, this act shall take effect June 30th, 2023. And if you look at 1013 and then you look at 1020, they all say something different for that.
Yeah, so
which one is right?
Yeah, if I can address that. So Barbara, what you've picked up on is the most complicated part of these 2 amendments, because they refer to statutes that are in current law, have repeal dates of 6/30/2021, and each of the 2 amendments has to be able to stand on their own. So the fiscal capacity disparity amendment, so 1012H, allows the repeal to stand on the free and reduced price lunch part, but extends the repeal date on the fiscal capacity disparity piece to 6/30/2023. On the other hand, Amendment 1020H does exactly the opposite. It allows the fiscal capacity disparity provision in current law to sunset on 6/30/2021, but extends the free and reduced price lunch statute through 6/30/2023. And so the repeal language is a little funky. In getting that right, I spent a lot of time with OLS yesterday and Mary Ellen working on this to make sure we got it right. The most important part, though, is if the committee were to approve these two amendments, all three amendments, let's say, then that the amendments are compatible with each other. Basically, the amendment 1012H would extend the fiscal capacity disparity grant language through 6/30/2023. Amendment 1020H would extend the free and reduced price lunch grant through 6/30/2023, and the committee amendment would reflect both of those merged elements.
You keep talking about 1020H, Dave. I didn't get that.
Yeah, I sent it over this morning. That's yeah. The one Barbara also referred to 1013H, which I sent over last night, and I sent it over with a note saying that it still had an error in the repeal language. 1020H corrects that. So the two amendments in play here that I brought forward are 1012, 1020, and then you've got 1010.
That's going to be a very known decision. Yeah, 13 is gone, right? Yeah.
13's gone.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Several people here didn't have that, and I'm just wondering. Okay, so I guess the next step for us to do is recognize that there is some necessity, regardless how we do this thing, that we try to get it to finance as quickly as possible. However, obviously, there's going to have to be some working with OLS here and with the LBA. And I planned on not having any sessions or anything next week. I was just going to have folks have, a week off, which would be kind of pleasant. And then the following week, of course, we're into 3 days of session down in Bedford. So the next time we can really get to and address this thing would be most likely almost like 2 full weeks out. So that's looking at a time frame there. And I think we do need to work on these right here before we can go any further today. So any comments from the committee out there? Remember, we're in committee of the whole.
Rep. Ladd, Louise Andrews has had her hand raised for quite some time.
Andrews.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have one question, which I don't know the answer, and maybe we'll have to look into. I understand the state of New Hampshire is going to receive somewhere around $350 million for school districts. And I'm wondering if any of that can be applied to this that we're looking to get from the taxpayers. Thank you.
That's a question we've asked on so many other types of topics too, in regard to air handling devices, etc. In schools. I don't know if we have clear. Well, we did get from Caitlin some definition of how the ESSER monies can be used. it was specific, it was about a page and a half of options you can use it for. It was pretty wide open. However, I don't have an answer for you on it right now. Whether some of this can be used to supplement parts of our formula, of course, I don't think so personally. I think that we've got to be very careful when we do that too. And the issue from a policy perspective, not speaking as a principal of a school, that funding schools on a one-time basis makes it very, very difficult to plan in terms of your labor, your teachers, your paras, teacher aides, whatever you want to call them. It's just almost impossible to plan year to year and have a long-range plan in effect. So it's wise not to use one-time monies in your basic formula that you have here. Adequacy is one thing. We're talking items right here which are apart from adequacy. Their fiscal capacity, disparity data, etc., was apart from, in addition to, it comes out part of a formula, but it's not part of adequacy. So I don't have an answer for you, Representative Andros, on that. It's a good question. I doubt very seriously that we should consider those monies as part of what we're doing in supporting our schools. I think that's a supplemental amount of money.
We have a hand raised from.
Mark, you there? You have your hand up, Mark.
Thanks. Thanks for the question. The $350 million going out, that's going to go directly to the schools under a federal formula. So it's already the federal government will decide the allocation. The state will do the allocation, but the Fed will determine what that allocation methodology is going to be, essentially. So that money's already going to the schools, just to clarify.
That's a statement I mentioned to us earlier, yes. Representative Woodside, Woodcock.
Your neighbor in Haverhill. Listen, Representative Ladd, thank you. Listening to you talk about the date, perhaps next week off and the following week in Bedford, just for my edification, what is the drop dead date that these amendments and this document has to be completed so it could be acted on in this next budget?
Well, there's for the House bills, the drop dead date almost upon us. But for the Senate bills, which are just arriving, which we don't even have them all yet, it's much later. However, then there's another date too, is the date for finance to have the bills out on the House floor and HB 1 and 2. If we miss that, we'll end up having to use a bill that we've already, like it's been done previously with a 3 or a 4, HB 3 or 4. And I don't think we want to go down that route. I think we need to try to rectify this on the House side as soon as possible. Finance, I believe, is acting next. I don't have that date right now. Does anybody out there have that date?
Monday
and Tuesday, I think.
I thought it was, a little later, Tuesday, I think. But that's right on us. And so this is why when we talk about things like the merger of the university system and that, they're looking for amendments there. And there's that's unresolved. So they're very, very busy putting this HB2 together. This would be, this has policy, but it also has, well, it has some figures in there right now, and those, of course, are Dave's figures. But we're at the deadline. We're there.
Thank you, Representative Ladd.
It's 6 is the last of the consent bills coming to the second committee.
Okay, I was just told the 6th is the last day to report Senate bills going to a second committee.
May 6th.
May 6th. May 6th.
May.
Right.
No, so we have time.
Okay, so that's where we are.
Thanks again.
Yeah.
Chairman Ladd?
Yes.
Yeah, my battery went out and Leon isn't here to plug into an extension cord. Anyway, looking at the two amendments 10 and 12, I do not have a problem with, except for, line 26, 27, I haven't looked at that. Because, our town, like a lot of towns, have just been finished an evaluation. So our valuation is increased, so that helps. I've been trying to find out what it is right now and what our population will see how we fall into that. But I do, other than the 1020H is, again, looking at paragraph 2 and paragraph 1 and 3 and whatnot. I haven't looked at that, but I've no problem with the increasing the equalized valuation per pupil. And then that part of it.
Okay, did you hear that, Rep. Luno? That you had a concern with 1028?
The other than the, no, yeah. 10, other than, I haven't looked at the language on comparison with, all those amendments on paragraph 1 of 236 and paragraph 2 and 3 of 236 on how they interplay. And so that's the only concern I have.
Yeah. That was that was the complex part in these amendments, and I had to go back. We had to go back to HB4 from 2019, and paragraph 236, which was the repeal language from this. And like I said, it got sort of funky, but we got it right through OLS late yesterday. And I'd be happy to work with you offline, Ralph. I can send you the pieces from HB4, and you can see how.
I can look it up. I'm just
okay.
It just one does one thing, one does the opposite.
Yeah. But
with that, why I mentioned before why we need to maybe combine it is because depend on how we take the amendments up, on what the result will be. If we do the one before the other, then you might have the undesired effect.
Yeah, the intention is for all these amendments to be compatible with each other. Right. So they can stand alone and they are compatible. So
okay, there's several options which we have here. Of course, we can't take action today. I think we'd be wrong in doing it. But we need to find out when this information that we have would be best serve the finance folks in finance. If they need to have this right off, we could always have an amendment made and do an amendment quickly sometime next week. I hate to do that, but we could do that. And then we would shoot it to them. It would probably go on to the House floor, and then we'd have that discussion and go to the second committee. Any further discussion on this? Anybody really objecting if we have to come back on, let's say, a Thursday of next week or Wednesday or
not Wednesday?
Pardon me?
Not Wednesday. I get my second shot.
You get your second shot on Wednesday.
The Thursday won't be so good for you. No, Rick got his yesterday.
No, I didn't get mine yesterday. My wife got it yesterday. She's fine. Yeah, she's tougher than a Marine.
Hey, Rick.
Yes.
Yeah, I want to put a shout out to Mark, really, for a great catch on that third grade reading.
Yeah. So we're staying with 1819, huh?
Yeah. Caitlin actually, she said she thought of it when she was brushing her teeth the other day. So.
Boy, I'd like to know the name of that toothpaste. Okay, so I think what we're going to do is we're going to try and get some amending language made here, tying it together. And then if we can get that together, Then we, see, today is what's today's date? It's, day.
25th,
Thursday, 25th.
Thursday.
Thursday.
Thursday the
Well,
25th.
Well, we can always post, see, that's where I am, as I'm zoned out here. We'd have to get something posted to have a meeting. That'll have to be worked out. That will have to be worked out, because right at this point in time, nothing's scheduled for next week. Is there anybody that's gonna take a trip and be gone next week? Mike Moffett, you're gonna be gone.
I'll be in California, but I
You
guess
can
I can
zoom in.
zoom in, yeah.
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 That'd be a 3 hours difference then.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'll
but
adjust.
it's going the right way, though.
Right.
You wouldn't wanna come back this way and have to zoom like in the morning sometime.
I have zoomed before.
So what we'll do is we'll work on this and we'll get back to you if we do have something scheduled for next week. We can post it to several locations and do it that way. So with that, I don't think we have any further to discuss or do today. I want to thank everybody for your patience. This is never easy. The cost of education is not easy. Okay, thank you very much for closing this work session down now, and we'll stay in touch.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
Great. Be well.
Have a good weekend.
You too. Take care.